He thought it was just another evening, another quiet walk through the place he'd called home his entire life. But within minutes, the world around him shifted into something darker, something he never imagined he'd face. One look, one assumption, one moment of silent judgment was all it took for his life to spin into danger. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Yet, somehow, he became a target. What happened next wasn't just painful. It exposed a truth many pretend not to see. And once you hear what he went through, you may never look at ordinary moments the same way again. But this was only the beginning, and the real nightmare was still waiting in the shadows. He had always lived a quiet, steady life. Arav was the kind of young man who kept to himself, moved carefully through the world, and tried not to draw attention. His days were simple: early morning shifts, long walks to clear his mind, and evenings spent helping his neighbors whenever they needed an extra hand. People who knew him described him as gentle, thoughtful, almost too patient for his own good. And despite the small challenges life tossed his way, he carried himself with a calm strength that made him easy to trust. But even in the calmest lives, there are cracks, small reminders that not everyone sees you the way you see yourself. Arav felt those cracks sometimes. In the stares that lasted a second too long, the tightened grips on purses as he passed, the doors that quietly clicked shut behind him. He brushed them aside, telling himself he was imagining it, telling himself the world was kinder than it felt, telling himself he was safe. On this particular day, nothing felt unusual. The sky was dimming. The breeze carried the smell of evening dust, and Arav walked the familiar road home with tired steps and an uncluttered mind. But somewhere behind him, someone else had begun paying attention, watching, assessing, shaping their own version of who he was before he ever spoke a word. Or didn't see the shift. Not yet, but the calm he was used to was slipping, and the path he trusted was about to twist into something far more dangerous than he ever expected. Because in just a few moments, his life would collide with a truth he had tried his whole life to outrun, and nothing would ever feel ordinary again. The uneasiness began quietly, so quietly that Arav almost ignored it. At first, it was just a sound of footsteps echoing behind him on the empty road. A little too close, a little too steady. He slowed his pace, hoping the person would pass. But the footsteps slowed too. He turned slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse, and saw a man a few yards behind, eyes fixed on him, jaw tense, posture rigid in a way that made Arav's chest tighten. He tried to tell himself it was nothing. Maybe the man lived nearby. Maybe he was just walking the same route. But something in the air felt wrong, like the silence around them had thickened. Arav shifted his backpack and kept walking, trying to steady his breath. Yet with every step he took, the man's stare seemed to dig deeper into his spine, as though he wasn't looking at a person, just an idea he had already decided was dangerous. A car rolled slowly down the street, its headlights sweeping across Arav's face before stopping a short distance away. The engine stayed on, humming low, and inside he could see silhouettes, two figures, unmoving, watching. His heart thudded harder. The footsteps behind him quickened, growing sharper on the pavement. Then came the moment that made his blood run cold. The man behind him called out, not with words, but with a sharp whistle. Immediately, the car doors cracked open. Not fully, just enough to signal something unspoken, something threatening. Arav felt the air shift, the way it does right before a storm breaks. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't even close to trouble. But suddenly, eyes were on him, sharp, cold, suspicious eyes that judged him before he spoke, before he moved, before he even understood what they saw when they looked at him. He crossed the street, hoping distance might dissolve the tension, but the car crept forward, matching his pace. The man behind him crossed as well. There was no escape in their gaze, only accusation. His palms grew damp. His breath shortened. Thoughts raced through his mind. Should he keep walking? Should he stop? Should he find someone, anyone, who could witness whatever was about to happen? But the street was empty. As he turned the corner, the car finally pulled up beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat of the engine on his skin. One of the men leaned just far enough out of the open door to look at her with an expression that carried years of unspoken prejudice, an expression that said he didn't belong here, couldn't be trusted, shouldn't be on this road at all. That a question sat on the man's face. But it wasn't curiosity. It was accusation, disguised as intent. Arav swallowed hard. He didn't want to run. Running might make things worse. But staying still felt like standing in the center of a storm he didn't cause, waiting for lightning to strike. Every step he took now felt like a gamble, every breath like a countdown, and deep down he knew something was about to snap. Something he wouldn't be able to unsee, unfeel, or outrun. Because the moment these men decided he was a threat, the night stopped being safe, and the next moment would push him into the darkest part of his life, whether he was ready or not. When the grip finally loosened and the men stepped back, Arav felt his knees weaken beneath him. They didn't offer apologies. They didn't offer explanations. They simply walked away, as if the fear they carved into him was nothing more than a momentary inconvenience. The car rolled off quietly, the night swallowing their presence, leaving Arav standing alone beneath a flickering streetlight, shaken, breathless, and forever changed. He waited there for several minutes, trying to steady the tremor in his hands. The world around him looked the same, the road, the houses, the dim glow of the lamps, but something inside him had shifted. The safety he once trusted was gone. The belief that kindness could protect him from judgment felt painfully naive now. He walked home slowly, each step heavy with the realization that no matter how gentle, patient, or careful he tried to be, some people would still look at him and see danger. But as the hours passed and the fear settled into a quieter ache, something else began to take shape. A determination, soft but unyielding. He realized that what happened to him was not an isolated moment. It was part of a larger pattern, a story written into the lives of countless others who had been misjudged, cornered, or harmed simply because of how they looked. His pain was not just his own. It was a reflection of a world still struggling to see every human as human. Arav knew he couldn't erase the memory of that night. He couldn't forget the eyes that saw him as less. But he could choose what the moment meant. He could speak, he could share, he could stand, not just for himself, but for anyone who had ever walked home afraid for reasons they didn't cause. Because the truth is undeniable. No one should have to fear for their life on a quiet walk home. No one should be judged before they're known. And no one should carry the weight of someone else's prejudice. So the question remains, how many more stories like Arav's will be lived in silence before we finally decide to change the ending?